Welcome to another episode of the Insurance Leadership Podcast. I'm Ryan Eaton and thankful to have you listening in with us today. Today we have a fun episode. We're going to be talking about how your company can create your own podcast, how you may want to build your brand and make yourself an advisor to the people that you work with, and also talking a little bit about self-funded plans and kind of some of the differences in the market. So we have Spencer Smith on the show today. Spencer has his own podcast. He's got over 20,000 downloads now on an insurance podcast, which is pretty special. And so we are excited and fired up to have him on the show. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Spencer, welcome to the show, buddy.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. It's nice to be here, man, and I love the studio.
Man, I appreciate it. Well, look, I love getting everyone started with kind of giving a little background about who they are, their family, and maybe even what brought you into the insurance business. You mind kicking us off with that this morning?
Yeah, so I grew up, born and raised in Texas. I have a southern drawl with you, and sometimes when I'm talking to somebody else that's in the South, it comes out a little bit more. I'll really embellish it for the podcast. But born and raised in Texas, with the exception of 5 years for college in Missouri, where I played soccer at a school called Drury University. That's the only time I've really spent out of state or lived out of state and came back with my wife. She followed me down to Texas about 12 years ago, and we built a life here. Stumbled into insurance like most of us had or have done, where I was just looking for a job out of college, and the only person that would hire me was Liberty Mutual at the time, and was willing to train somebody with no experience how to be a claims adjuster. So I did that for about a year and realized I got tired of arguing with lawyers about slip and fall claims that were probably fairly sketchy in nature and doubtful were legitimate. So I moved over to Benefit Mall and cut my teeth in the finance world for Benefit Mall for about 6 years. Ventured out in the broker world, then got into sales with Sun Life, sold stop loss for about 5 years, and then eventually found myself at Plansight, now doing RFP software for insurance brokers.
Oh man, that's awesome. I didn't realize you were at Benefit Mall. Did you say you were with them for 6 years?
I was in my 20s. I was at the home office, where I guess their old home office here in Dallas, but mostly in finance though. I was paying the sales guys my last job, and then I realized how much they were making and how little I was making, in comparison, and that's what took me into the sales world.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing over at Plansight. Kind of, you said you're working with RFP and the technology side of it. Kind of give us a little more in depth into what you're doing there.
Yeah, so it started as an idea about 6 years ago with our co-founders, who are both ex-brokers themselves in the Salt Lake City, Utah market. We're getting together and lamenting over the fact that the process for an RFP, if anybody's ever done an RFP in the insurance world, where you're sending out emails and you're getting PDFs back and you're transcribing into Excel and trying to turn that into a presentation, it's kind of a known broken process in the industry. So our co-founders one day just finally, I don't know if it was over a few drinks or what, but decided that, hey, let's go bet our money on this and let's go sell our practices and build software that improves that process for everyone. So I joined about 4 years ago, bringing my knowledge and skills of the self-funded industry and stop loss and things like that. But it's a complete solution. So it's everything from gap insurance we have on now to small group ACA to dental, vision, life, disability. It's designed to being a single system of record for employee benefits brokers to handle the entirety of their marketing process for RFPs.
So it's handling everything, not just self-funded, but it's even handling it on the fully insured side as well then. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I talk a lot about self-funding, and obviously the podcast that I do, we'll talk about later, is called Self-Funded with Spencer. But, I have to be very quick to make sure when I am presenting the software to a prospect that is not all that we do. That is a small component of the big picture of what we do. And our job is to make sure that whether you're a mom and pop brokerage that has 25 clients or you're a large alphabet shop, that we've designed a system that can accommodate everybody's needs.
No, I think that's great what you're doing there. We built something for our brokers internally years ago because we do a lot of small group administration. You know how it is. Most people don't want to running to get a quote on a 3-man group, right? And really being able to shop it and run with the dental, the vision, the life, the disability, all the different product lines. Trying to do that, it's a lot of work. And so we built something internally with kind of shelf plans where it's really not RFP, but it's kind of a built-in rater meter system that kind of works for all 50 states. And we saw the need of it. We saw within our first 12 months, the number of groups that came in, but it was a huge time saver for us as well. And I'm sure that's what you're seeing as well from the broker side, not just dealing with the 3-man groups, but 2,500 life groups. There's some big opportunities there if you can cut down the time on quoting.
Well, and yeah, we've got preliminary numbers. I mean, we've been doing this in the open market. This is now our 5th year, but some of our longest standing brokers have shared with us that about 3 to 5 hours on average per RFP per year is what they're saving. We think that's conservative, but we rather err on the side of conservatism when we point that out. But if we can extrapolate that over the course of hundreds of thousands of RFPs a year, we're talking about untold number of hours that would be saved for agencies every single year.
So let me ask you this, just because with what we do, self-funded is kind of the area I'm least associated with when it comes to the life and health insurance space. When you're getting all the quotes put together, are there any other systems technology vendors out there that are doing this on the self-funded? I know when you get to fully insured, there's some that are doing it out there, some that have more complicated processes than other, but when it comes to self-funded, is there a lot of different options out there for this, or is it all still a manual process right now?
No, so there aren't a ton. There are a few competitors that have some specialty in self-funding and stop loss for sure. You were asking earlier about perhaps how we differentiate ourselves, and those systems are good. Like, I don't come on a show or even in having a private conversation disparage competitors, but we've taken a different approach. We want to be best in class for each individual line of coverage, but in combination, especially when you get into building the story through a presentation that we have the availability to do in our system. That's where we are able to draw lines of distinction. So there's people that specialize in life and disability and do an incredible job in that. And there's people that specialize in stop loss. Our job is to be great at all of those things combined. That way somebody's not having to choose a system that's a partial solution rather than a complete solution.
Oh, I love it. How many states are you guys doing this in?
I think we are, last I checked, was 15 states and growing. We've got some pretty significant things that I'm not at leisure, or I guess what is at liberty to say is the word I was looking for right now. That should change that significantly. But it's been a very methodical growth process for us because the importance is making sure the software itself is bulletproof. So when you flip that switch, people aren't scrambling and complaining about that scaling process.
All right, now where's y'all's home office? Where are y'all located? In Texas?
Salt Lake City area.
Okay,
Utah.
Salt Lake City.
I'm not the sole employee in Texas. I'm one of 2 employees, but I'm the sole salesperson in Texas.
Gotcha. No, that's fantastic. Well, look, one of the things y'all have done to be able to kind of drive new business, and this is kind of how I first saw you and kind of heard about you. One of our guys was on your show, and I was like, man, he nailed that podcast. And we were laughing about it afterwards. Josh Sullivan, who was on your show, he said, man, Spencer could be like really a full-time podcaster. He's that good. I was like, man, that's great. We got to get him on the show. But with that said, I'm trying to figure out, we wanted to get someone on the show for a while, right, that was in insurance, but then also kind of understood the technology podcast side. Because for us, where it's brought value is not as much necessarily the likes, the shares, the different things like that are all numerical, which we're so used to looking at when it comes to the insurance side. But the relationship aspect, the relational equity that's kind of built, some of the leads and outside carrier connections and GA connections and TPA connections that have come through it have been way more than we ever expected at the beginning. So absolutely. I say all that to be able to say, what kind of got you guys to decide that you finally wanted to be able to start a podcast?
Well, so I would say my experience or transition into podcasting was probably fairly unique. Before I did the podcast, I did a whiteboard series called Stop Loss with Spencer. So taking my knowledge from the stop loss world, this was July of 2020, which many people know what was going on in the summer of 2020. And I was sitting there as a salesperson going, well, all of a sudden I'm not allowed to go meet with people anymore. Zoom hadn't really proliferated to like it is in our daily lives today. And so I was sort of scrambling for how do I create awareness about myself and what I do and ultimately draw attention to the company. So somewhat on a whim, I had this idea. I've seen Dr. Bricker do those whiteboard videos. If anybody knows Dr. Eric Bricker, he's a genius. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that, but I'll do that in my own niche, which is stop loss insurance. The crazy thing is, Ryan, I had no idea what was going to happen, but I released that first video, which was literally Stop Loss 101. and it trended 3 times on like the top 1% of LinkedIn. I don't know if I just caught fire accidentally. I'm not really sure, but me not knowing, that was my first video I'd ever created and loaded to LinkedIn. So I thought, oh, maybe this is like how it goes, or let me just figure out what to do from here. So anyways, a long-winded backstory to say I did 25 of those videos. I exhausted everything I knew about stop loss and felt I'd just be like beating a dead horse at that point. So the podcast seemed like a natural offshoot where you could expand upon the idea of self-insurance, but just like you, invite people on, let them be the expert for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, talk about their subject matter, own it, and I really just going to be part of the conversation, but I no longer have to lead it. I no longer have to come up with all the content necessarily, and it just expands your potential for podcast to nearly an infinite level of episodes that you could do. And so it was just the continual sort of growth of that original offshoot, which was those whiteboard videos.
Well, it's funny, you mentioned kind of bringing people onto your show gives you more topics, more information. That was one of the things for us at the beginning where, when you've got only 2 episodes on your show, it's like everything's a topic. When you start hitting that 20 to 24 episodes, it's like, hey, wait, what's our topic going to be on this day? Because you want to kind of mix it up. And now you have over 20,000 downloads, 80-something episodes, which when you're talking about insurance, that's huge. And you've done a fantastic job there. My brother, we were laughing about it the other day. He said, does anyone actually download podcasts about insurance? I was like, yeah. I was like, I promise they do.
Surprisingly, they do.
They do.
It's weird, but, it's so funny. You were talking about numbers, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit, just like kind of quantifying the value of it. But I have my Spotify for podcasters on my phone, and it'll give you some metrics. And it's crazy. I'll look on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and 10 or 15 more people have listened to it. I'm like, who's listening to my podcast at midnight on a Saturday night? But somebody is. So there's, I don't know if they're masochistic about insurance or what, but there's definitely an audience for it, and I think it speaks to the power of finding your niche and really niching downward to something that you do specialize in, and you'd be surprised how many people are interested in that subject.
Spencer, what would you say to the guy who's listening right now? Maybe they got a single man shop, maybe it's a big large 1,000-man brokerage. But if they're looking to maybe build something that's out there for their brokers, for their clients, for their customers, what would be something that you would kind of suggest to them when kind of getting started, and what to kind of be thinking of and keep it in the back of their mind?
Yeah, there's a couple of different answers to your question, Ryan. I think, setting aside podcasting for a second, any one of those people that you just described should be leveraging social media, whether that's a LinkedIn, whether that's simply just posting articles, writing articles, interacting with folks. The lowest barrier to entry is LinkedIn for folks like ourselves. And if you're not at least using that as a baseline, I think there's a really big missed opportunity. From there, you can expand in whatever channel you want. So plenty of people I know make 30, 60-second videos where they're just talking about one small subject or highlighting some new, legislation that's come down. Since we all have one of these in our hands, right, we have the power of recording video and uploading it to the internet in one fell swoop. So to me, it's the more of that excuse or the fear of doing it. I think that's more than anything just an excuse. So that's one component to answer your question. The other component, if they are interested in podcasting, I can say that it's created an exponential effect on visibility for me, relationships that have grown from it. I was actually tabulating the other day. I've had people fly in from 16 states to be on the show, and I could have literally never imagined that the first time I sat down and did my first episode. So you don't know, but you don't know until you try. And so I would say the downsides are only if you can't control what you say, and you might occasionally slip up or venture into the territory of being controversial, which I don't do. But other than that, I really don't see a downside for anybody's career, especially if they're in sales.
How long did it take you to get the technical side of it set up for you at the beginning? We had Casey Combest here who kind of helped us with kind of the whole process. But for someone who doesn't maybe have an IT or someone technical or someone who's done podcasting before, what would you kind of recommend there on getting started, and how long did it take you on your original kind of whiteboard series?
Yeah, so I figured out the whiteboard videos fairly quickly, although I was dealing with sound issues. Anybody that's ever recorded a podcast will quickly discover that audio is like your number one friend and enemy, depending on how good your audio is. So I had to start investigating things like buying a lapel mic, or I bought a Blue Yeti that sits on my desk if I want to use a microphone like that. And this thing was $20. The Blue Yeti's $120. I mean, you can spend a crazy amount of money, but it's not really necessary unless you're doing professional level audio recordings themselves. But other than an iPhone, I mean, I think most people should just use their iPhone to start. I wouldn't go out and spend $5,000 on a camera. If I did that, I wouldn't know the first place to start or how to operate it. I've been fortunate, like you, to have a production team that I can trust to shoot, set up, execute on the video, monitor the sound, do the editing afterwards, create the clips. There's an economic expense to that. But for me, that was the way that I was able to sort of differentiate myself as a podcast versus, the guy or gal that just said, hey, one day I want to start a podcast, and just start doing it. So you have to obviously weigh what the cost benefit analysis is for you in investing in equipment.
What was one of your biggest struggles when you first got started compared to now? Yeah. And for us, one of the things is, finding the quality guests, with finding the quality topics, and trying to think along those lines. Some stuff gets easier as it goes. Some stuff gets a little bit harder as it goes. What have you found from the beginning to kind of where you are now, 80 episodes deep? What have you found being the differences?
Well, so the first episode, and I've been very fortunate, Ryan, I'll say this. I joined a co-working space at the time that had a turnkey podcast studio that they invested about $20,000 in building a studio, getting a great setup. They used iPhones still, but they had really good quality microphones. And literally my first episode, I was able to take advantage of that. And it was only about $100 an episode that they charged to produce that. So I never started on my own. So I probably, other than the whiteboard videos, wouldn't be the best person to consult around how to set it up on your own. I've made a choice, though. I've made a choice to go down the path of spending a little more money so that I know my production value is as high as it possibly can be. You don't have to do that, though. And I would definitely caution people to overspend too early until you know that this is actually something you're committed to doing. Otherwise, you'll be like 90% of the other people in the world that quit after like 3 or 4 episodes and just simply realize it's too much work and it's too hard.
No, that's very fair, very fair. What advice would you give to someone maybe who they can record great topics, build great things, but they're looking at about from advertising on social media, maybe not even advertising, but just posting content? I've noticed one of the things I've seen since I kind of picked you up with seeing Josh's videos, you come out with some great images and some funny stuff that you put out there on a consistent basis that's really good. Yeah. What would you suggest from the marketing side to someone trying to get their content out there to the general public?
Yeah, so I mean, this will kind of go to back to your last question, which I didn't fully answer, kind of what have I seen in terms of the evolution of the podcast. But the growth of my podcast, there's a clear trajectory that's come along with the amount of effort I've put into the social media marketing component of that. So what I mean by that is consistently posting an episode on every Tuesday morning, releasing a newsletter on LinkedIn that supports that episode and announces it to the subscribers, posting clips 3 to 4 times a week to market that particular episode, to just push and try to continue to attract viewers to the show itself. I have seen how that has improved not only the download quality, but also the interest of people coming in to say, hey, I would like to be on your show. What do I have to do? Or I would like to sponsor your show. What does that look like? By continuing to be visible like you were describing, where it's every single day, something's out there, whether it's a personal post or whether it's a clip or whether it's announcing the episode, it's just an ever presence where it looks like you're everywhere, but I'm really only spending 5 or 10 minutes a day of the actual posts themselves. And so you can create this appearance that you're constantly out there when it really isn't that much effort if you just make it a part of your day.
Oh, that's great. What other advice would you give along those same lines to someone kind of who's, again, looking to, I don't know what to say, kind of pick a topic that they want to hit on, like,
Yeah.
so you had stop loss insurance, and we liked insurance and leadership because we felt like we were dealing with a lot of brokerages and carriers and TPAs, and we were an insurance company ourselves too, and so it's kind of like, hey, we don't want to segment that, but let's kind of hit the leadership side of it. What would you say from someone who's really trying to specialize or niche out to a specific topic?
Yeah, I would say you're better off doing that for sure. Unless you don't really want to talk about what you do on a daily basis and you simply want a podcast where you talk to friends or, business associates or something where there isn't really a subject. I think that what I would caution somebody that goes that route is that may be fun, but then your audience is not really going to know what your show is about. Especially if you're doing this for professional purposes like you and I are doing, you're better off picking a topic that supports your business. You were mentioning earlier that we think about metrics, we think about downloads. I would say there's an outsized or a disproportionate impact that talking about the subjects I talk about I've had on the industry or people coming to be on the show or lead generation for myself or for my guests that don't really translate into the normal economics of a podcast where they're thinking about how much money in advertising can I make per 1,000 downloads. It's weird because if I focus on delivering value in a certain segment of our marketplace, I've been able to garner sponsorships that don't really make sense on paper. I'll be perfectly honest, a pure download perspective, but it's because I can prove the value through the guest interactions, through referrals, through business that comes into my guests, through business that comes into me, that there's an outsized level of impact that the episodes have because I'm talking about a very specific thing.
Bring value, niche out, basically, try to figure out something that you can continue to bring quality content on or bring other people in to bring quality content. What would you say has been your biggest mistake or one of the funniest things you had happen to you while doing this? Because I know everyone's got several different things. We were laughing about some earlier.
Yeah, I would say the biggest mistake, I actually kind of got my biggest mistake out of the way, or at least I hope it'll be my biggest mistake. But the very first episode we shot, I was telling you about that studio. And we did have, when you pay that $100 to enter that studio and have them record it, it comes with somebody monitoring the sound. The person that was monitoring the sound was fairly new to the job. And so I get my episode afterwards. We recorded for like an hour with my buddy Dennis Fowler. And Dennis and I had a great time, great conversation. We leave. I get the episode a couple days later, and I'm like, well, that sounds like crap. Like, I'm like, did I just pay for $100 for somebody to record it on their iPhone? And what happened is they did actually record the audio on the iPhone. He forgot to plug in the actual audio cord so that it was going through the soundboard. So the only audio that was recorded was from the iPhone. So I had this beautiful looking podcast where we're switching cameras and everything's in 4K, and then audio that sounded like I recorded it, in my bathroom. And I'm like, what the heck? So he told me, he fessed up and he's like, dude, I forgot to plug the thing in. Fortunately, Dennis was a good sport, and he actually left the podcast saying, man, I wish I could come back and do that again. Quite frankly, I would have changed some of my answers. And he was also local. So it was just a matter of rescheduling. And now, not only did I learn a valuable lesson, but my podcast guy, who to this day is the guy that I now hire to do my podcast, he learned a valuable lesson as well of redundancy of checking the cords every single time.
That's right. We actually run with a backup here for the same time. Same time.
Yeah.
Well, look, Spencer, I know we're getting close to kind of our 20, 30 minute mark. We're about halfway through.
Yeah.
What would you like to say, kind of open forum, anything else you'd like to hit? Maybe on the insurance side or podcast side, something I didn't ask you that you'd like to spend a minute on?
Well, I think the thing that we didn't really touch on is how it's been a boon to my sales career. You mentioned how you are getting leads that come in, strategic partners that come in, these relationships that form as a result of the episodes that you put out. I've experienced the same thing myself. About 2.5 years ago, before I'd ever made a video, I was sort of this anonymous sales rep that my brokers knew because I called on them or I emailed them or I had meetings with them. But in terms of like a public identity or recognition, I had zero. But from the efforts that I put into those videos and put into the podcast, every single week, as I release an episode and market that episode, somebody eventually lands on my profile, follows me and connects. At least one or two also end up on the Plansight website, request a demo, and end up becoming prospects. But the beautiful thing about that, not only is it an inbound prospecting tool, but they've already probably listened to 5 or 10 or 15 episodes. So they've formed a relationship with myself, with my guests, kind of, the things I stand for, my value system. So I've done a lot of the legwork, if you will, on the initial parts of a sales process. And by the time they come and listen to a demo about Plansight, they're already effectively sold. And it's just making sure that it's the right fit for them. That has been this really weird phenomenon that I wouldn't say is weird now in hindsight, but it wasn't something I expected going in, that I had a lead generation tool that was out there working for me on a daily basis.
So you basically found at the end of the day, it put you at the advisor level with the advisors, right? It didn't put you at kind of reaching out to them. It put you either there or the expert level, basically, where they were coming to you for advice instead of, hey, just coming to you to get a quote, right? Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I talk to a lot of consultants too, and I do treat the podcast as almost like a consultant sitting there and validating a solution or listening to somebody, not necessarily present their pitch, but talk about what they know. I try to ask questions as if I was an advisor sitting down for the first time and going through the subject matter with them. So naturally, that's also attracted consultants to be listeners of the show. And so they view me somewhat on a peer-to-peer basis for consulting advice as well.
Well, you have an excellent show, and I've listened to it, not just the one episode I mentioned earlier, but a few other ones, just to kind of get a gist for how you're doing it. And you do an excellent job running that. And Spencer, I can't tell you, thank you so much for being on the show today, man, and spending 20, 30 minutes with us. You did a fantastic job.
Well, thank you, sir. And you guys got a great setup as well. I mean, I would encourage you, if you got the time, Ryan, I know you do them once a month, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but I imagine with your skill set and with the production crew you've got, you could probably do weekly podcasts if you wanted to as well.
Man, it's funny you say that. I got a guy in the room right now. He's nodding his head at me because he has been trying to get me to do this once a week now for the past 2 years. And it's like, man, I make zero revenue directly from this, and the time commitments that it takes, it's kind of one of those things. But I love it. It's a lot of fun, and all of ours have guests and speakers on here, so it's not me having to create content for each one. So, but you got him nodding. I can see him out of my peripheral vision right now.
Well, tell him I'm nodding it now.
That's right.
But yeah, no, I get it, man. It's a grind.
That's right.
It's not for everybody, but I definitely appreciate you putting forth the effort to do it, Ryan. You guys do a great job.
Well, thank you, Spencer. I appreciate it, man. You have a wonderful day. Thanks, buddy.
You too, sir. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Insurance Leadership Podcast. We thank you for listening in. Remember, a good plan today is better than a great plan months from now.